going to jump over to SOLIDWORKS Electrical. Now, SOLIDWORKS Electrical is a bit of a misnomer. It probably should have been called SOLIDWORKS Schematic, but I am not in marketing, so I can't make any of those kind of changes. As we did in the poll at the very beginning, you can do hydraulic and pneumatic schematics here in the SOLIDWORKS Electrical schematic environment. What I'm going to start with today is a blank project. So I'm going to show you two different projects. One that is completely blank that we're going to do together, and then I'm going to switch over and we're going to look at some 3D aspects of an existing project. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a power schematic. We're going to start with a power schematic, and then we're going to go to a control schematic. And again, like I'm saying, I have nothing on the screen. We're going to do it from scratch. Now, this is the user interface for SOLIDWORKS Electrical. You see it's very similar to SOLIDWORKS. You have a graphics area right here in the middle. Over on the left, where you would have your feature manager in SOLIDWORKS, you have your what we call the documents browser, and then our components browser. Over on the right, we have some what we call panes, properties panes, macro, and symbol panes. Up top, very similar to the command manager, you have a command manager. All of your commands across the top are bundled nice and tidy, just like they are in any other Office program. It's a very easy program to learn. There's not like a huge learning curve. And so let's go ahead and get started. On the schematic tab, we're going to draw a multiple wires. Now, wires inside of SOLIDWORKS Electrical are not just dumb lines on paper. They're actually very intelligent wires. So I want to kind of just show you what this looks like when we're drawing these. When we're drawing these, we could invert the phases, we could preview corners, we can make some really cool looking wires very, very quickly. That way you can meet your design needs and it doesn't take you a ton of time to just draw wires on the page. Now, I want something pretty simple. I want 3 phases and protection, and I want this to go all the way down my page, and then I want to do this again, but go across because we're going to create a motor starter circuit. Now, obviously, we have some lines on the page, but they don't mean a whole heck of a lot yet. But I do want to go point something out, that if I go up into what we call the wire styles, we can look at different wire styles that we have in this project. Now, this is really good for your company because everyone can then standardize on a specific type of wire for a specific voltage or current or diameter for that specific wire. And at that point, you don't have 4 or 5 different people doing different things, and you can look at a schematic and know who drew it. Ideally, once you implement SOLIDWORKS Electrical, everyone's schematics should look exactly the same. And that's kind of the beauty of standardization, is everything from your company will look in one standard format. Notice that there's even groups for hydraulic and pneumatic air quote wires. These are obviously tubes at that point, but a tube carrying air or hydraulic fluid is very similar from a schematic perspective to a wire. So we've drawn these, and what we need to do now is fill out this motor starter circuit. So obviously we need to hook something up. Well, I'm going to go over to my symbols palette here, and I'm going to search for a motor. Now, SOLIDWORKS Electrical is SQL based, which means the back end has a lot of horsepower running behind it. You're not going to be sitting here waiting for SOLIDWORKS Electrical to do things or search for things. Notice that I type motor and hit enter, and right away we got all the symbols in our database that have motor in the name or the description. I'm going to grab this 3-pole motor here, 3-pole AC motor, and I'm going to drop it onto these wires. Now notice something, that when I drop this motor, what happens to these wires? Well, when I place it, it automatically trims those wires. So I don't have to come back and run any routines or anything like that to trim it. You'll see that right here, this motor has trimmed the wires itself. Now, the name or the tag or the designator, whatever you guys call it for this motor, is 02M1, indicating that this is the first motor on page 2. So that is highly, highly customizable. If you want that to be rows and columns, or if you just want it to be M1, or maybe you want it to be named by its physical location, we can do that inside of SOLIDWORKS Electrical as well. One of those things that we recommend is getting an implementation with electrical, because there's little subtle things like that that will need to be set up to meet your company's needs. Now, I have some physical locations in this project. Obviously, we can look at this project from the documents perspective, and we're looking at the O2 power page. We can also go over to this little Windows 95 symbol. It's not really, but it's fun to reference. And inside of this project, you'll see that I have that motor. And currently, that motor exists inside the main electrical closet. That is not correct. We want that motor out on the conveyor location. So I can use what we call the location outline. Pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. We're going to click on location outline and draw a box around that motor that we just placed. I'm now going to force that motor to be in the conveyor's location. So clicking on conveyors and hitting select, it will then ask me, do you want to just say it's in here but not really move it? Or do you want to change that component location? Well, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to change that motor's location from being in the electrical closet to actually being out in the conveyor location. Now, to power this thing up, we probably want some safety. Maybe we don't want to hook it directly into the bus power. That's going to be a problem. We're probably going to burn some stuff up. There's no safety involved. So I want to come over here and find a disconnector. If I could type it right. So now I can grab a 4-pole disconnector, and I can throw him way up here and place him exactly where I want. Now, notice the name of this one is 02F1. That's because it is the first disconnector on page 2. And so, again, we can customize that to meet your exact needs. Now, for this motor starter circuit, I'm probably going to need a breaker and a contactor. Well, let's come in here and let's search for 3-pole, because that's exactly what we want, is a 3-pole breaker and a 3-pole disconnector. Or I'm sorry, breaker and contactor. So I'm going to come in and let's grab this one. This is a thermal circuit breaker, and place him in line. Now, one thing that I'm doing here is I'm placing these symbols, but what I'm not doing is I'm not giving these symbols intelligence. I want to come back and I want to add that intelligence later. I think that it's a good idea to get your ideas down on the page, or the design requirements down on the page, and then we can come back and we can add that what we call manufacturer part information to it, or the intelligence for the symbols. So next thing I want to do is I want to add a contactor in here. So I'm going to get my 3-pole contact, drop him in line. And again, you're seeing the names. These names are automatic. It's not something that I have to go to an Excel spreadsheet and grab the names or figure out what's next. SOLIDWORKS Electrical will take care of that basically admin side of your schematics. It just removes it completely. And it just lets you focus on actually designing or engineering these circuits and not having to name components or anything like that. Now, the next thing I want to do is add some terminals in here. So obviously, I need to add a bunch of terminals. In this case, I need to add 4. I could add 4 of them individually, but I want to do this command called insert n number of terminals. Now, what this allows me to do is to just draw a line across any of the wires that I want to break, and then choose the directionality of this terminal. So you'll notice that this red triangle, that is indicating the pin 1 side of this terminal. And it's going to line up all the terminals on this strip to the same side. That way, you don't have 2 guys out in the shop building some control cabinets, maybe like 3 feet from each other, but those terminal strips are all they're all different. They're all discombobulated from each other. It's very good to have that standardization. So if you can specify which side is the terminal pin 1 side and have everyone build off of that, it's going to be better, especially if you get out in the field and try to do some troubleshooting. So I'm going to place it to the left, and I want this to be called X1. We could change this name. Obviously, the root here is X, and this is the first terminal, or the first terminal strip, so it would be X1. We could change this to TB if we wanted to. So this would then be terminal strip, or terminal block 1. You could change this to TS, whatever you wanted. I'm going to hit OK for all of these. You'll see it's on TB1. This is our terminal strip 1. This is the first terminal, and that's the first pin of the first terminal of the first strip. So it's very granular in that regard. So at this point, I need to go in and I need to number my wires, and I need to add information to to these symbols. So we can actually fill out maybe like a bill of material, or we can look at the schematic and understand what pin numbers are being used and what manufacturer this is. So the first thing I want to do is come up and right click on one of these, and we're going to go to component, and we're going to assign a manufacturer part. Now with SOLIDWORKS Electrical, there's about 3 or 4 different workflows that you could follow. Same thing with the regular SOLIDWORKS Mechanical product. You could design something in 4 or 5 different ways and come to the same end result. So I'm just showing one workflow here where you add a symbol, and then now we're going to assign a manufacturer part to it. When I assign this manufacturer part, this is putting intelligence behind this symbol. So I'm going to go grab this manufacturer part, and I want to show you what this looks like. So I'm going to go to the properties of this manufacturer part, and what this contains is a part number, a manufacturer. You can put these into a library so that you can have all of your designers and engineers pulling from the exact same library to further push that standardization. You can have descriptions for this manufacturer parts, specific symbols or 3D models that you're already going to use. You can have sizing. You can even have use and control voltage and frequencies. There's also more data that you can add in here if you're linking this to an ERP system so that you can push and pull information from another database. There's also circuits, and this is how the symbols actually get their terminal names or their pin names, if you will. And so there's a lot going on there, but that is exactly how the intelligence is added to the symbols. So as soon as I hit OK here, you're going to see the information get populated next to the symbol. Let's continue doing that, and I'm going to add some manufacturer information to this component. Again, right-click Assign Manufacturer Part and grab the correct component. Now, if you don't have a component in your database, then that's a really easy thing to alleviate. Number one, it's very easy to type up a brand new component. You could go to your library and you could choose your manufacturer parts manager. Choose where you want this thing to land, like maybe a circuit breaker, and then you can hit Add Manufacturer Part. At this point, it's just a typing exercise, and get your pinkies all warmed up and then type it out. There are faster ways than just manually typing everything. Plus, manually typing everything leads to human error, because if I can type it, I'm going to mistype it. So there are ways that you can import data using tools like Excel, or you could even go out and you can download data from the internet. So there's an online content button, and if we go out to the online content, then it's going to land us on a web page called the SOLIDWORKS Electrical Content Portal. And don't steal my password, but it's probably the same as yours. It's a bunch of dots. So now if I jump over to the catalog portion of this website, you'll see that there are a ton of manufacturer parts out here. There's almost 12 million manufacturer parts. Maybe we need to send an email to some of the SOLIDWORKS employees, tell them to get them numbers up. We got to pump them numbers up to at least 12 million manufacturer parts. But there's a ton of stuff out here, and you can go grab all this. These are obviously the manufacturer parts. There's cables, there's symbols, there's even 2D footprints. So there's almost 1,000 manufacturers. Now, not everything's out here, because obviously there's more than 12 million different manufacturer parts in the world. So again, you could type this, or you could use Excel, and you could leverage that to pull all that information in. But let's continue to add intelligence to these symbols. So again, I'm going to right-click. I'm going to go down to my component, and we're going to assign a manufacturer part. So at this point, I just got to continue searching for the specific manufacturers that I want to use. So perfect. We got everything except our motor. We almost forgot our motor here. So now I'm going to go assign the manufacturer part for our motor as well. Perfect. Now, one thing that I want to highlight is the fact that whenever I'm adding a manufacturer part to a symbol, it's keeping track of everything that I'm doing. Now, notice if I delete this manufacturer part that I just applied, it understands that that motor circuit needs 4 circuits, or that motor symbol needs 4 circuits. You'll see that if I were to go in and go back to, if I delete that manufacturer part, and then I go back to assign that manufacturer part, it says, okay, I need 4 circuits. And when I search and I click on one, it even gives me a preview and shows me that those would then turn to green, which would indicate that I'm properly using the circuits from this manufacturer part. So by adding that and hitting select, all that information gets filled out. And these are all what we call attributes. These attributes can be hidden or shown depending on need. Now, one thing that I used to do at my last company is I would over attribute manufacturer parts, because we had an internal part number, we had a manufacturer, the actual manufacturer part number, and then we had an inventory location. And we needed to manage those three pieces of data on every single component that we put into our database. Now, whenever I sent customers schematics, I didn't want to necessarily send them the ones that had our part number or the manufacturer part number. I wanted them to see our part number. So what I would do is I would go into the attributes and I would just turn off any attribute they didn't care about, like in this case, maybe IP rating. But that could be exactly what you would do per component to hide or show specific pieces of data. You could also use a global rule. You could go into your project and you can go into what we call the configurations, and we can go to the attribute tab, and we can add a symbol attribute that's hidden, and we could put it on a specific layer to hide it, and then you could print the PDF, or you could print the actual drawings to DWGs if you wanted to. But that's a really nifty way that you could hide and show data on demand. Now, we've got the basis of this motor starter circuit started. And what I want to do now is I want SOLIDWORKS to tell me where I've messed up. Now, it's really easy in like the mechanical tool. It's just going to scream at you whenever you mess up anyway. But in the electrical tool, you could make mistakes that can go unnoticed until your boss checks your work and says, "Why did you make this mistake?" And you're like, "I don't know." Well, with SOLIDWORKS Electrical, you could go up to the design rule checks, and you could launch that, and we can look at components with missing manufacturer parts or wires without mark. So these first two DRCs, or design rule checks, which is basically just like spell check for your electrical designs, we can look at anything that's missing. In this case, we tend to miss the terminals, at least I tend to miss the terminals for their manufacturer parts. So obviously I need to assign a manufacturer part to that terminal. I also need to assign the wire numbers. So I'm going to tackle both of those really quickly. First of all, I'm going to do the wire numbers. Now, wire numbers in some systems can be very, very challenging because it's time consuming. It's not hard to make a text box and type the text in the text box, but it can be very, very time consuming to make literally thousands of text boxes. Even copying, pasting, that speeds you up a little bit, but it doesn't do it as fast as what we can do in SOLIDWORKS Electrical. Now, those wire styles come into play because the wire styles carry formulas to name themselves. So if you wanted a wire style to carry its color, its gauge, and its from to component, you could create a formula that would name the wire exactly the way you wanted. So that kind of leads back into that setup. The setup for SOLIDWORKS Electrical is pretty critical. It's one of those things where if it's set up properly, you never have to think about it again. If it's not, then you might be battling it for a while. So make sure that you set everything up correctly for SOLIDWORKS Electrical in the beginning, and all the formulas then just work magically down the line. We call that the auto-magic way. At least I do. I mean, I'm a super nerd, right? So what I want to do is name these wires. So let's go to process, and let's number all the new wires. Now, think about how much time it would take to number all of these wires with simply text boxes. So much so that I've seen some customers where they don't even number the wires because it's too time consuming. If you have that conversation, some people are like, yeah, I would love to be able to number all of our wires, but I just can't allocate that time. Well, think about how long this would take. If I hit number new wires and it says, are you really, really sure that you want to do this? Yes, I did. Yes, I am. And it went ahead and named all of these wires for me. So you'll see all of our L1, L2, L3, and then all of our grounds, those have names as well. Now, that's very easy to do, but obviously I want to make sure that my design rule check is good. And wires without mark, I have just a couple now. So we'll address those here in a little bit, but now I also have a components without manufacturer part. So let's go look at these terminals. These terminals here, obviously I could go to each one of these symbols and I could assign a manufacturer part, but I don't necessarily want to do that because that just feels like rinse and repeat. If I'm doing something over and over again, then I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to evaluate my process and see if there's a faster way that I can do it. With SOLIDWORKS Electrical, there is. I can go up to my terminal strip, and on my terminal strip, I can choose that terminal strip of TB1, and I can hit Edit. And here, it gives me a nice graphical window to show me exactly what this terminal strip consists of. Obviously, there's 4 terminals here. One of them is ground. Now, I want to assign a manufacturer part, kind of shotgun style, to all of these. So by highlighting all of these manufacturer parts, I can assign them in one big go. So I'm going to use this WAGO terminal here and hit select. And perfect. I have now assigned all my manufacturer parts to these terminals. So my DRC, it has been taken care of. But while we're here and we're looking at this terminal strip, I want to actually assign a cable from our terminals over to our motor. So I can see that obviously I have these 4 wires, but these aren't actually wires. These are a cable that we're going to use in real life. So I'm going to grab all 4 of these air quote wires and I'm going to associate them with a cable cord. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to go grab a cable that already exists in my project. Now you could add a new cable, much like we are adding manufacturer parts. You could add cables into your database as well, and you can add them into your project. In this case, W1 is exactly what I want. I'm going to grab the 4 cores of a cable, and then I'm going to grab the 4 wires here, and I'm going to associate these together. So now I've just told the software that these are not wires, these are actually a cable. And you can see that in a graphical representation right here on our terminal strip editor. Now that's great, but how do I see that? How do I let my guys designing or building these cabinets actually know that that's a cable? Well, I'll take this a step further, and I'm going to hit this button that says Generate Drawing. When I click on that, it says, where do you want this to land? Well, I want this to land in my project. Duh. Thanks, SOLIDWORKS Electrical. And it says, cool, I'm done. And I can hit close, and those aren't really the words that it says. Those are just what I think in my head. And then you'll see that there's a TB1 here, and if I open this up, that's our terminal strip drawing. So you can see that our TB1, terminal 1 through 4, connects with the cable of W1, and it shows us all the pins that it's connected to from our terminal to our motor. Now, that is really good. I used to print these out, and the guys out in the shop would build off of these because it has basically every bit of information you're going to need to connect a terminal strip. Plus, if everybody builds off the exact same terminal strip drawing, I would hope that all those terminal strips are exactly the same. So if you have to do over the phone troubleshooting, or if you have to go out on site to a customer and you need to troubleshoot, you know exactly what terminal does what. So we're going to reference back to this here in a minute, but next thing I want to do is add a power supply, and we're going to have to power our control circuit. So one thing that I can do is I can leverage what we call macros. Now macros are very easy to create, one, and it allows you to standardize further with known good working circuits that have been approved and added to your database. And obviously it's very easy to use. So all I have to do is take an existing macro and then drag it in, and then just let it land exactly where I want it. And I'll just scoot it up a little bit and then let go. Now I was going to ask what you want to do with the components and the locations and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to hit finish here because I'm going to grab my defaults. Now I have a power supply that we landed into this project. This needs to connect over to a control schematic, and at that point I need to now open this control schematic and kind of detail exactly what's going on. So what I need to do is actually draw that control schematic. Now obviously this control schematic here is blank and there's nothing here. Well, let's go ahead and draw it completely from scratch. There's no tricks up my sleeve, no aces in my sleeve either. For those of you that play spades, my buddy and I, we always joke that we're hiding an extra ace of spades in my shirt. But anyway, I'm going to go to schematic, and we're going to do a draw single wire this time. Last time we did a draw multiple, so we're drawing a bunch of wires at once. This time we're drawing a single wire style. And I want to draw this 24 volt DC 18 gauge wire. Now I'm going to show you a little trick here. If I draw a little circuit, instead of drawing the circuit, I can draw a rectangle. And that seems a little counterintuitive, but check this out. With SOLIDWORKS Electrical, whenever you draw wires, each wire segment can be moved. So at that point, I can move all of these wires into position so that it's very easy to create some rungs or circuits here. Now at this point, I want to put in some information that links back to my power page. So obviously, I'm going to want a relay coil over here. So if I were to go over to our K1, you can see that if I right-click on this and choose Insert Symbol, it's going to prompt me that says, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to select a brand new symbol, or do you want to choose a symbol that was defined in that manufacturer part? Well, if I do that, I know that I'm standardizing, and I can choose this relay coil circuit, and I can hit OK. At this point, I can now put that on my top rung, and it understands that 02K1, that is the exact same physical component in real life. We're just showing multiple symbols representing that same single physical device. Now, I want to do the same thing because I need to latch that in, because well, first of all, I need a start button and then an uh-oh button, an e-stop button. So I need a start button first. So if I come over here to my symbols palette, I can obviously find things using the search command, but I also have what's at my fingertips, what we call palettes, these symbol palettes. So I could come into maybe like command, and on this command, I could use a push button to start, and I can place that in line. Now, obviously, it says O3S1, so that's a switch. It's a push button switch. Now, I want to assign a manufacturer part to that, but I'm going to do that here in a second because I want that to be an illuminated switch. And I want that switch to light up whenever the relay coil is on. So I want that in parallel with my coil. So I'm going to go grab my light here, and I'm going to place this down. Now, notice that it calls it H1 for an indicator. That is not right. I want this to be part of S1. So H1 needs to go away, and this needs to say O3S1. So in this case, I need to have two symbols representing the same physical device. So I can right-click on this, and I can choose Assign Component. And I can say, you know what, I want this to be part of S1, and then I can hit my green check. Right, S1 right there. Well, I thought I was going to make it part of S1. Let's do it again. Let's go here to make it part of O3S1 and hit OK. There we go. So now it says it's part of O3S1, and it says, hey, it's also on page 3, row 3, and that's exactly where it's at. And this one is on the same page, and then we call those cross references. So now I need to put an e-stop in. So obviously we need an emergency stop. So I'm going to throw him up here and place him down. Now we've got our e-stop, we've got our start switch, we've got our indicator light. We also need a normally open contact to latch in whenever someone hits start and make sure that it continues to run and it's not just a momentary run. So I'm going to place a normally open contact in here, but I want it to be part of K1. So again, I could go over to this K1 and I could right click on it and choose Insert Symbol, and then choose the insert the symbol from the manufacturer parts, which is this normally open contact, and hit OK. So I could either insert it from the manufacturer part, or I can place a symbol and then associate it back to that component. So now I just need to clean up my circuit a little bit. Obviously, I need to take this guy and I'm going to copy him, and then I'm going to paste him. And I want that line to be between these two rungs. Now, the way SOLIDWORKS Electrical functions with the lines or the wires is I can delete that wire segment and it won't cause any issues. I could do the same thing by pasting another wire segment right there, and then finally pasting a third one right there. Now I could remove that wire segment right there. So now our start button and our normally open latching contact are in parallel, and our relay coil and our light are also in parallel. So that's perfect. Now all I need to do is assign these manufacturer parts. So this manufacturer part, this S1, I need to find one that has a light and it has a normally open push button. Well, I can right click on this and again go to the component and then assign a manufacturer part. And I can hit search here. You're going to see that I have like 1,200 manufacturer parts under our button switches. Well, if the manufacturer I want is in here, I can just search for that specific manufacturer. I can also search for number of circuits or by supplier or supplier part number, whatever I wanted. In this case, I'm going to grab this switch. Notice that it grabs that and it adds that information not only to that one symbol, but both symbols. Because SOLIDWORKS Electrical understands that this S1 has two symbols associated with it. So it's keeping track of all of these components as we go. I also want to add another component for our e-stop, so I'm going to right click on that one. Now another way you can do this is go symbol properties and then manufacturer parts and hit search. So a couple extra clicks there, but it gets you to the same position. So right click component and choose assign or go over to the double click. Now everything here has a component, and I can check that again by going to my DRCs, and components with missing information is clear, so we're good to go. So at this point I need to change the wire styles over here on the right side. Now if you notice back here on our O2 power page, we have two different wire styles coming out of our power supply, and that's perfect because we need one to be 24 volt DC and then one to be ground. Now, if I come over here and I right click on this and go wire style and choose to replace it, I can replace this to Equipotential, which means everything that this is touching on these sides of these symbols. I can hit my green check, and now it's going to ask me, okay, what do you want to replace this with? Well, I'm going to replace it with this ground here and hit my select. So now you'll see that we have both of our wire styles lined up, and that's perfect. We're ready to rock and roll. Now we'll need to number these wires. So we're going to go back to our process, and we're going to number all the new wires without modifying the existing ones. So that's perfect. And then I need to hook up from this page to the other page. I need to hook these two up. Well, I can do that with what we call origin destination arrows. Other programs, they might call them offsheet references. In SOLIDWORKS Electrical, we're going to call this origin destination arrows. Schematic tab, origin destination. I like to make it full screen just so it's easier to see. And then at this point, by default, it's on horizontal tiles. I feel like this is watching a widescreen movie on your phone sideways. For those people who take vertical video, don't be a vertical video person. Go ahead and go vertical tiles and make sure that your schematic looks a little neater. We're going to go to single insertion. Under single insertion, you're going to see that SOLIDWORKS Electrical is giving me some visual feedback as to which wires I'm actually selecting. So in this case, I'm going to select that wire and then go over here and then select that wire. And you're going to see that it has this blue circle on here. I'm going to address that here in a second. But whenever I select this ground wire, I can only select the exact same style on the other page. So it will not let me create a direct short between two wires. It's like taking a power wire and a ground wire and just kind of twisting them together and saying, perfect. We probably don't want to do that. So we want to hook a ground wire to a ground wire. So I'm going to hook it up right there. Now, these blue dots on the screen indicate that we have what we call an equipotential mismatch. And the only way you can get in this scenario is if you were to number the wires on both pages independently and then try to hook it up. Because this is wire 204, and on 03, this is wire 302, because it's page and then counting number of wires. Well, we want that to actually be the exact same wire. So to do that, what I need to do is right click on this, and then we can choose to solve our equipotential mismatches. So there's a solve equipotential mismatches. Words are hard today. Conflicts, that's why. So then I get to choose which actual wire number I want this to be. I'm just going to choose the lower number in this case. You may want to choose the 302. This is one of those scenarios where you might have some standard that drives this, and if all the circuitry is really over on this page and the power supply is over there, you may want to choose 3. Let's go with 302, and you'll see that our equipotential mismatch has been alleviated. Now over here, we have a ground 2, and on the first page it's a ground 1. So to solve that, we're going to solve the equipotential conflict, and I want this to just be ground 1. You'll see the name of this is now switched over to ground 1. So now we have all of our controls in order, and at this point I need to talk about how we can expand on our design. Okay, so if I were to go back over to our power page and I take everything about this motor starter circuit, let's say that you have a customer that required this exact design, and they said, hey, you know what, it'd be really nice if we could expand this and do 2 more motors. Well, you would have to do all that stuff all over again, or what you could do is you could use copy and paste, or you could use your macros, and we could paste this in here as 1 more here, and then we could even do another. I'm going to line this up down here and just line it up in the correct position. And then you'll notice that I have some issues here. So what I need to do is actually back this thing up, and I can delete these as well. So I can delete the segments in between, and that's pretty straightforward, just deleting those so that they're not hooked up to the wrong one. And then I can use this command called stretch. I can stretch all of these, and I can stretch them all straight down. I'm going to fix that one here in a second. That's okay. This guy, he needs to go back. He needs to go back straight. And then I need to hook him up way over here. So just a little bit of housekeeping there. But notice that whenever I copied and pasted all of these, they automatically increment into the next one. So it's 02, Q2, Q3, K3, K2. And notice that the terminal strips picked up at terminal 5 and then carried all the way down to 12. So it picked up on that exact same terminal strip. Now I might want to expand this location outline all the way down to include all of these motors so that this thing looks a little more nice and tidy. Now, what we did before is we had this terminal strip drawing. Now this terminal strip drawing is out of date. What we need to do is we need to right click on this, and we're going to say that we want to update this terminal strip drawing. Now it's been keeping track of all of our changes, so when I copy this and I paste this and then update my report drawing, you'll notice that I have a ton more information on this terminal strip drawing. This is 0 effort from my part. This is all the software just gearing up and creating all these terminal strip drawings for me. So that's great. Let's look at another report that is hugely beneficial, because I know at previously when I had to use Visio, I had to do all of my bill of material reporting over in Excel, and it was all 100% manual. Because we've entered all this information in SOLIDWORKS Electrical, I can click on this reports button and I can generate any reports that I want. In this case, I'm going to do a drawing list, I'm going to do a bill of material, and I'm going to do a list of wires by line style. Hit OK, and basically with the snap of a finger, you're going to get all these reports created and dropped into your entire project. Maybe a couple snaps of a finger, but it's not like you could whistle a big tune or anything. But what we have here is this bill of materials. You'll see these bill of materials, it breaks it by all the different manufacturers in this case. One thing that I really like about this is it shows the mark or our tag for that component. And it's hyperlinked, which means that you could go to that component and go to its symbol and go directly to where that exists in your project from the bill of material. So it's one of those things where if you're thumbing back and forth through a printed out PDF, it might not be as beneficial as having an intelligent linked bill of material. So another thing that we can do is look at this list of wires by line style. You'll see every time that we have a new style, it's going to make a big break. It has the wire number, it has the section or the gauge of that wire. It has from to list. These are also hyperlinked, so I can go to that manufacturer, I can go to that circuit for that. These reports are 100% customizable too. So don't think that you're pigeonholed into just using these reports. These are 100% customizable. You could even interface with all the tags, like all the M1s, and you could export those to like a wire labeling machine. One thing I like to do is I like to make a brand new folder and call it reports and hit OK. And then grab any reports that I have created, including that terminal strip drawing, and drag and drop them, or drap if you want to say both words at the same time, into the reports folder. Now notice that these are out of order. That's because the drawing list was inserted after the fact. Now from now on, this entire project will be counted as 1, 5, 2, 3. So you just have to note that down in the engineering change later. No, that's not good. We definitely don't want to do that. If I were to right click and go to renumber documents, I can renumber all of these documents, and I can recalculate the order numbers and hit OK. And you'll see it now changes to 2. Now, what's really good about that is if I were to take this power and move it down and have it after control, all of my numbers for my control page and my power page, you're going to see that they're all wrong now. Well, I could go to my process and I could update my marks. So I could say renumber marks, and I want to recalculate all of them and hit OK and say yes. You'll see now I have changed this to where all of my marks that were on page 4 now, that were previously on page 3, because we reordered these in the tree, have been fixed. So obviously it's very easy to renumber pages, and after a renumber of pages, it's very easy to reorder or remark all of these components. Now, I like to export this to a PDF as well. So I hit export PDF, and I'm going to take this entire project and I'm going to do all the pages, and I'm going to throw these onto my desktop, which is a catch-all, and hit save and print to PDF. Now, usually at this point, people are like, are you really about to show me a PDF? And absolutely, I'm about to show you a PDF, because everyone has a device either in their pocket or somewhere really close to them that has a PDF reading capability. Now, obviously, you have all the benefits of having a PDF, as everyone can read a PDF, but also there's some really cool stuff with this output PDF in SOLIDWORKS Electrical. If I click this bookmarks link, you'll see that I have my documents browser with the one book and even the report folder. So all that intelligence that you've built into this project carries through even into the PDF. So you can see I can jump into my list of wires, my bill of materials, my O3 power page. I can even come down to my components browser and look at my conveyors and look at my main electrical closet enclosure. So at that point, I can then click on any of these, and I can see the exact symbols for those components. I could click on one of them, and it's going to take me directly there. I could then click on this to cycle through all of the different symbols for that component. Now, here's something that's really cool that I think is the biggest benefit for using this output PDF. Is these origin destination arrows. If I put my cursor on it, you'll see it turns into a little hand. I can click on that, and it takes me directly through. That way, if you're using a PDF, you don't have to lose your spot. You can say, okay, that's the circuit I was thinking it was, and click, and it'll jump you all the way back. So there's a lot going on in that PDF. I think it's a huge benefit to have an intelligent and highly linked PDF. The bill of material, if I jump over here to the bill of material, still has these links as well, so you can click on it and it will take you directly to those components. Now I want to show you one more thing, and this is in SOLIDWORKS Electrical 3D. If we were to jump over here, obviously we can do 2D panel layouts. If you don't have Electrical 3D, it's very easy to do. Basically, we're going to create a panel layout, which is like creating a drawing for the panel in 2D. But I want to kind of step into 3D and see how we could get exact lengths for our wires. So I have this project here that has a cabinet. All we have to do is insert our component. So right-click, insert, and then let it snap to the DIN rail. And then I can do my next component and snap that one into the DIN rail, and then continue going down through here. Maybe this one goes up here. A power supply, put him down here, and then I can insert RT1, and then I can even insert door components. So if I insert some door components, I can hide these that have already been inserted first of all, and then I can right-click insert our H1 door component, and then our other switches over here. I probably need to flip this one around if we want to pass any kind of OSHA or safety testing. Got to flip that one around with the tab key. And then finally, S2, we're going to insert him, a little E-stop, make sure he's facing out because we definitely won't pass any safety testing with that the wrong way. Now I need my terminal strip, so I'm going to insert terminals, and I'm going to insert our first terminal, and then I'm going to let them touch and go to the right. So obviously I inserted some terminals here. Now this can be done in SOLIDWORKS right now, but what I really like is with SOLIDWORKS Electrical, you can route wires. So I can say I want to do some wire routing, and I'm going to specify that I want to do all of these components, and then hit my green check. It's usually where you get up, you go get some coffee, you kind of chew the fat with your coworkers, or at least teams them and chew the fat on a video call and laugh at anybody wearing sweatpants. But what it's going to do is it's going to route all of these wires from component to component for each wire style. Now those wire styles contain those wire colors, they contain the diameter, they contain the bend radius specifications for each one of these styles that we've used. So you can see that placing them in Electrical 3D will give you a very accurate visual representation as to how your electrical project is going to be look at the very end. So these wires can be routed. You can also route cables, and you can route harnesses. So there's a tons of stuff that you can route in 3D. Now the benefit to routing things in three-dimensional space is you have very accurate wire lengths. So if you were to go back and pull a wire report, you would have absolutely accurate wire lengths from the physical 3D routes over in SOLIDWORKS Mechanical.